South Africa is a paradise, renowned for its stunning scenery, multicultural people, and detailed history defined by apartheid, which was a system of institutionalized racial segregation and discrimination. Bet you didn't know that there is a small town that only permits white people to live in it. Welcome to Orania. Here are some strange facts about the small town. Number 1. Orania was founded in 1991. As apartheid was gasping its last breath, a group of Afrikaners decided they weren't quite ready to move on. In a move that felt like history pressing the rewind button, they bought a secluded piece of land in the Northern Cape, far from the rest of South Africa, both geographically and ideologically. Their mission? To create an exclusive town where Afrikaner culture could flourish undisturbed. One of the key figures behind this endeavor was Karel Boshoff, the son-in-law of Hendrik Verwoerd, the man infamously known as the architect of apartheid. His family, it seems, was determined to keep his legacy alive, though instead of a nationwide system of segregation, they settled for a small town where they could call the shots. Orania is now a town in South Africa that is self-governing and has its own rules and leadership systems. Number 2. It's a private town. Orania is unlike most towns in that it is privately owned. A group of Afrikaners purchased the land, which is managed as a cooperative. New residents must apply for membership, and current residents control who is permitted to reside there. Only those who have the proper and necessary cultural values, such as speaking Afrikaans and being an Afrikaner, are allowed to live there. Supporters say this has little to do with race. Their justification is focused on the necessity to protect their cultural heritage. Critics argue, however, that this is a covert approach to sustain racial exclusivity. Number 3. It has its own currency. Orania has its very own currency, the Ora. While South Africa's national currency, the rand, is still accepted, the Ora is designed to keep money circulating within the community, reinforcing the town's vision of self-sufficiency. The Ora is mostly used for trade within Orania's industries and businesses, ensuring that wealth stays inside the town rather than flowing out. It's part of a bigger strategy to build economic independence. To manage all this financial wizardry, Orania even has its own bank. So, while the rest of South Africa worries about interest rates and inflation, Orania residents are busy deciding how many Oras it takes to buy a loaf of bread. Number 4. Orania is controversial. As noted by its supporters, Orania is not solely about racism, but rather preservation of a culture. For many South Africans, it's an apologetic mark of apartheid that segregates races in a nation that is moving forward to undivided society. In contrast, the supporters claim that the town simply does not have an explicit acceptance or denial, but the order of identity, culture, and language politics reduces them to an Afrikaans-speaking white. Number 5. It's entirely self-sufficient. Self-sufficiency is one of the principles of self-reliance, which are key to Orania's objectives. Unlike other South African towns that rely on government funding and outsource labor, Orania runs a tight, self-sufficient ship. No government grants, no outside workers, and definitely no help from anyone who doesn't share their vision. If you live in Orania, you're expected to roll up your sleeves, whether it's farming, construction, or running a local business. The town has its own schools, businesses, and even solar energy projects. Residents proudly claim that their way of living is a shining example of sustainability and independence. Critics, however, argue that it's less about being a model town and more about staying as isolated as possible. Number 6. The population is growing. What started in the early 1990s with just a handful of families has now grown to over 2,500 residents. The town continues to attract Afrikaners who feel out of place in mainstream South Africa, believing Orania offers a safe haven where they can preserve their culture, kind of like an endangered species. Orania's leaders have ambitious plans for the future. New houses, schools, and businesses are popping up, with dreams of eventually turning Orania into a full-blown city. Number 7. No crime, or so they say. Orania is famous for its almost non-existent crime. Residents proudly claim that they don't bother locking their doors. Their kids roam freely without a care, and the biggest threat in town might just be a stubborn goat refusing to move off the road. Compared to the rest of South Africa, where crime is a major concern, Orania stands out as a supposed haven of safety. So, what's their secret? Well, according to residents, the low crime rate is due to their strict community rules and selective approach to who can live there. It's like an exclusive club where everyone shares the same values, or at least the same language and traditions. They argue that a homogeneous community reduces social conflict and keeps the peace. When you live in a town where everyone knows everyone, there's probably not much incentive to commit crime. Because, well, let's face it, where would you even hide? Number 8, no black residents, but it's not about race. The leaders of Orania insist that their town is not about keeping races apart, but is focused on preserving Afrikaner culture. However, the reality is that there are no black residents, leading critics to argue that no matter how it's framed, the result is still racial separation. Orania has faced legal challenges several times, but continues to exist because it functions as a private community, which is allowed under South African law. So, as long as you brand it as a cultural preservation project, you're apparently in the clear. But let's not kid ourselves. Whether by design or coincidence, Orania remains an all-white community in a majority black country. Number 9, the South African government's response. When it comes to Orania, the South African government has largely chosen the "let's just ignore it and maybe it'll go away" approach. While some political leaders have loudly criticized the town, calling it an insult to South Africa's democracy and diversity, others argue that as long as Orania stays within the legal bounds of private property rights and self-determination, there's not much to be done. Essentially, as long as Orania plays by the rules, it's like that one distant relative at family gatherings. Controversial, but tolerated. Over the years, a few politicians have made noises about integrating Orania into mainstream South Africa. But so far, no concrete steps have been taken, and the town continues to operate largely unchallenged. Whether this is because the government has bigger problems to deal with, or because Orania is seen as more of an oddity than a real threat, remains up for debate. But for now, Orania keeps doing its own thing. Number 10, will Orania survive? The big question is, what does the future hold for Orania? Will it continue as a cultural time capsule? Or will it eventually have to join the rest of South Africa in the 21st century? Although the town's population is growing, it's still a tiny drop in South Africa's demographic ocean. Some believe that as generations change, young Afrikaners might not see the same need for separation, while others think Orania will keep chugging along as long as residents remain committed to the cause. For now, Orania remains a unique and debated part of South Africa's life after apartheid. So, what do you think? Is Orania a harmless cultural project or a dangerous form of modern segregation? Let us know in the comments.